Scott Woodside's compelling and unique stories. All true. You be the judge. Or, well... Woodside shares stories of his 30 years in radio and TV, sales management, stationery business, and cemetery and funeral businesses. Totally unpredictable, amusing, sketchy, and kind of hard to believe. All right, Woodside, hit us with another one of your stories.
A close encounter with NASA astronaut John Glenn, Senator John Glenn. You're not going to believe this because I certainly didn't believe it. When I first went up to Washington, D.C. and started morning radio with my partner Jim Elliott, we worked in a little studio in Bladensburg, Maryland, with the signal that covered the nation's capital, WPGC, well known in the nation's capital. The studio was dilapidated, horrible, cold in the winter, hot in the summer. It was built in a basement of a 4-story building that should have been condemned and torn down. But the person who hired me was Dan Mason, former president of CBS Radio. And one of the first things he told me when he brought me up to DC, he said, "Son, it doesn't matter what kind of a studio you work out of. I know you seemed a little bit bummed out by how dilapidated it looked. He said, "Here's the thing. The only thing that the listener cares about is how does it sound coming through the microphone." And boy, was he was spot on about that. Boy, you almost had to close your eyes doing the show because you didn't want to see your surroundings. But so we're doing our morning radio show. I had just moved up from Atlanta, and this was in 1978, I believe, or 79. I had just turned 30, believe it or not, and scared to death, went up to D.C. on a wing and a prayer, stayed in the Holiday Inn. No, it was a Howard Johnson's, within walking distance of this radio station in Bladensburg, Maryland, and it was kind of depressing. I went up there for $28,000 a year, and I thought, well, yeah, that seems okay to begin with, I guess. I'll just have to show how good I am, and maybe I could make more money. Well, $28,000 in 1978-79 in Washington, D.C. was about enough to buy groceries for 2 people. And we had just had our first daughter about a year earlier, 2 years earlier. So here I am going, okay. And then we started looking at houses. But I digress, right? You want to hear about John Glenn. So let's go for it. But I had to set it up because in that kind of environment, you don't know that anybody's listening. You have no idea. You're just doing a 4-hour show every day, Monday through Friday, morning drive, because that's your job and you're having fun. You're the lowest rated radio station in the nation's capital, so what did it matter, right? So we did a promotion with the Kennedy Center and with the people that produced the Superman movie. We gave away free tickets to the Superman premiere and took listeners in a limo. So I guess we had about 6 listeners that I accompanied to the Kennedy Center to watch the premiere of Superman, right? So I had to rent a tux. The radio station said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll pay for the tux." And I thought, hell, thank God, at $28,000 a year, I can't afford to rent a damn tux. So we're there. I felt like Cinderella. A tux I didn't own, a limo I'd never been in my life until that moment. Picked up the listeners at their homes. We drove down to the Kennedy Center, and we're in this line to go through to get our seats. It's outdoors. And there's this little short guy in front of me, balding in the back of his head. And I'm thinking, my God, this man looks familiar. Anyway, the listeners that were standing behind me said, "Hey, Woodside, we think that's John Glenn. I said, no way in hell. John Glenn? He wouldn't stand in line for a movie. Anyway, they said, well, there's only one way to find out. Tap him on the shoulder and ask him. I said, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I said, okay. Tap, tap. Excuse me, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to bother you, because he was talking to his wife. I said, but my name is Scott Woodside. I work at a radio station here in Bladensburg, Maryland, and we're doing a promotion with listeners, and that's why I'm here. But they think that you're John Glenn. And he said, excuse me, what did you say your name was again? And I said, Scott Woodside. He says, holy crap. My wife and I and my entire family listen to you every damn morning. You and your crazy partner, we wouldn't know what to do if we didn't listen to you every single morning. That's how we start our day. I said, so you're John Glenn? He says, yeah. He says, look, I've got to get your autograph, because if I go home and tell my kids I met you and I don't have an autograph, they'll never forgive me. And I said, autograph? I'm thinking, autograph? I just came up from Atlanta, Georgia, and you want my damn autograph? Wow. So I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed by it. And I said, okay, I've got a deal for you. I will do an autograph for you if you do one for me. He said, hey, no problem. I'm more than happy to. So I wrote an autograph using his back, and he wrote one using my back. And he said, I'll one-up you on that too, Scott. And I said, what's that, Senator? And he says, call me John. I said, what's that? He said, the next time you get some time, give me a call at the U.S. Capitol, at my office, and I would love for you and your wife, when she comes up here from Atlanta and you sell your house, love for you and your wife to come over for dinner and meet the family. I said, okay, all righty. Anyway, did I ever call? No, I never did. I was so humbled by that first impression. And that got me to thinking, if John Glenn is listening to our morning radio show in the nation's capital, maybe we have a lot more listeners too. Wait till I tell you some of the listeners that hopped on to the Elliott and Woodside phenomenon in Washington, D.C. for a hellacious 10-year run. Those stories and more are coming up